Hello and welcome to today's webinar titled Strategic VISTA Member Supervision. Thank you for joining us. The target audience for this session, for whom this session is designed, is individuals who directly supervise or are responsible for supervising VISTA members. But regardless of your role within your VISTA project, we're glad to have you with us today. I'm your host, Eric Powell, a training specialist with the VISTA program at AmeriCorps headquarters in Washington, D.C. I'm joined today by my colleague, Andy King, our main presenter, who is the senior training specialist here at VISTA headquarters. In addition to being very knowledgeable and relatable, Andy plays several roles in supporting VISTA leaders, not only through this webinar series, but also through his work on VISTA leader orientation and developing resources for the VISTA campus. Andy, welcome and thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Eric, and a warm welcome to all of you who've joined us today. I'm thrilled to be here to talk about how you can enhance your supervision strategies in your role as a VISTA supervisor and look for ways you can provide some practical support for your members throughout their service year. So let me first set the stage with a brief scenario. I'd like you to meet Rohan and Mackenzie, two VISTA members at different stages in their service journey. Rohan is a new VISTA member who just arrived at a service site. He's excited to start making an impact in the community, but he also feels a little isolated since he doesn't know anyone yet. Mackenzie, on the other hand, is in the last month of her service year, and she's already made a significant impact through her VISTA service. As we go through today's session, we'd like you to think about the following question. You are their supervisor. How could you cater your supervision strategies to meet the unique needs of each of these two members? So I'll give you that to think about. And now we'll take a look at our agenda for today. We're going to cover 4 essential topics that will equip you with the tools to successfully align your supervision strategies with each of the 4 phases of the VISTA member lifecycle. Kick things off, we'll first compare supervising employees to supervising VISTA members. Then we'll explore the unique characteristics and needs that VISTA members have during each of these 4 phases. Along the way, we'll identify some actionable steps and activities for you to consider in each of those phases. And then finally, we'll discuss the importance of documentation, and we'll provide some recommendations for what to document throughout the VISTA member service year. At the end of the session, as usual, we'll have time for Q&A, so we'll answer your questions. Now, we're excited to share these insights with you, so let's go ahead and get started. As a supervisor, you have a crucial role in ensuring a positive and productive experience for your VISTA member. Your guidance and support can make a huge impact on the success of the project and on your members' personal and professional growth. By providing the necessary support, feedback, and encouragement, you can help your member navigate the different stages of their service year. In doing so, you'll not only help your member achieve their goals, but also contribute to the success of your project and the community. So as a supervisor, it's important to remember that VISTA members are not employees and that there are a few important differences between the two. VISTA members commit to serve for a year and they're bound to the terms and conditions of their service. So within this limited time together, it's really important to make every day count. To make a difference during a 365-day term, VISTA members will need your help in transitioning into VISTA life very quickly. Members cannot be terminated by their site or their supervisor, as you probably know. Only the AmeriCorps regional office can do that. So your role as a supervisor includes guiding and supporting the member through challenges and opportunities, as well as documenting any issues that arise in case you need to have a conversation with the portfolio manager. One challenge of hosting VISTA members is ensuring that everyone who interacts with them understands that they're there for a specific purpose and they're not general helpers. At times, you may need to help your members set and maintain boundaries when others ask them to assist with work that's outside their VISTA assignment description. And while there are definite differences between supervising an employee and that of a VISTA member, there are some things that they have in common. First, both employees and members require coaching and skill building opportunities to grow and succeed. Second, regular meetings and communication are essential to maintain a good working relationship, as well as to be able to assess their progress. And lastly, regardless of the type of position, overseeing and tracking their performance is important to provide constructive feedback to help the individual continually grow. Now, during your service year, VISTA members typically go through a roller coaster of emotions, which can have a significant impact on their overall experience. This graph, which is based on Ken Blanchard's situational leadership model, illustrates how people experience various emotions as they work through a new challenge. They may feel excited and motivated at times when they feel they're making a difference, but at other times they may feel overwhelmed or discouraged by challenges or the complexity of their assigned activities. These ups and downs are natural and to be expected, and it's essential to supervise your members in a way that adapts to their changing needs. What works during one stage of the VISTA member year may not work during another, so it's important to be mindful of their emotional state and their overall well-being and adjust your supervision style accordingly.
Thank you for that, Andy. That was a great way to start off. And I do want to take a moment to go back to Rohan and Mackenzie, who we met earlier. Because as you may remember, both of them are at different stages of their service journey. For example, Rohan just started at his site about 2 weeks ago. Mackenzie, on the other hand, is almost done with their service, with just 1 month left. With this in mind, we would like you to respond to the following question. In what ways do you think Rohan's and Mackenzie's supervision needs may differ? We'll give you about a minute to respond in the chat, and you can share a few words or a sentence in response to this question. I'm loving the music. I would love to continue listening to that, but I'll read off a few chat comments as we're going through. A lot of good comments coming in for Rohan, who just started about his site about 2 weeks ago. Lots of comments around suggesting being proactive and meeting the needs even before they start service. Another one mentioning giving Rohan motivation, a larger picture of what he can do. And then a couple of others with Rohan before I move on to Mackenzie. Rohan may need more time with the supervisors specifically to learn the role, the community, and the organization. Give Rohan time to acclimate to the site, get comfortable with the VISTA assignment description, and then provide additional support for a newer VISTA member. On the flip side, I see a lot of comments coming in about Mackenzie, saying with only 2 weeks left in service, she needs support with thinking about what's next in terms of her career, in terms of how to transition from VISTA service to what's beyond VISTA service, helping with sustainability projects and documenting what she's already accomplished over almost her entire year, and really also being reactive in some ways, meeting her needs before she comes to you, more trust, and also giving her oversight as she transitions out. These are great comments, and I see a lot more coming in, so I recommend taking a look at them, and I can't read all of them, but these are great comments and suggestions. And I do want to offer a thank you to you for participating in this first chat question. It's great to see all the comments and the thinking that you're putting into this, because it really is important to reflect on all of this as you supervise new and current members at different stages of their service year. So thank you, and let's continue. So unlike supervisors who hold permanent positions, VISTA members only serve for 365 days, and they may start at different times throughout the year. As a supervisor, you need to develop a strategy to align your supervision with the limited time frame of your member's service. This means you may need to tailor your approach to fit within the member's service year, while also still ensuring that your members receive the necessary support to be successful. To help you with this, we'll walk you through each stage of VISTA member service and show you how to create a cycle of supervision that aligns with each stage.
All right, thanks for that setup, Eric. So as we begin exploring the VISTA member life cycle, at least as we see it, I'd like you to take a moment to reflect on your own experiences with starting something new. So whether it was a new job, a hobby, some project or other endeavor, you likely had a mix of emotions and uncertainties as you got started. So you know, you'll probably be able to relate to this as we go through. At the beginning, so in this first phase, we characterize members at the start of their service as enthusiastic beginners. We typically find that members in this phase, like Rohan from our scenario, they're filled with excitement and motivation, excitement to make a difference, but they also would likely feel nervous, isolated, or unprepared. Typically without any prior experience in their role, the enthusiastic beginner usually requires a great deal of direction and support from their supervisor. So this can include things like getting clarity around the goals and objectives for the position and the member's specific work on the project, getting clear expectations about their role and their responsibilities as a member at your project site. It could also mean that you may need to help make connections between your member and others and helping them to understand team dynamics, as well as a supportive and understanding work environment where mistakes are accepted as part of the learning process.
On the screen are some activities that you may want to consider when supervising a member in the enthusiastic beginner phase. Andy, why don't you start us off in exploring each one?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, during the first few months of a VISTA member service, and this happens typically as part of their on-site orientation and training, supervisors are going to want to provide a comprehensive overview of the organization and its mission. And one way of doing this is through storytelling. You or other members of your staff or even community members can share stories about the impact that your organization has made in the past and how that has led to the work that your VISTA member will be responsible for. This type of storytelling can help set the stage for your member to see the need for their position and their assignment.
That's a great idea, Andy. I personally think storytelling can be a really powerful tool because it can transform exactly what you're saying into something both engaging and memorable. I also know that a good story has really good ways of inspiring you and moving to action, unlike anything else. So what else? What's next?
Yeah, well, it's important to clearly outline the expectations at the beginning of a VISTA member service to make sure that you're both on the same page. It's also helpful to discuss things like norms that exist within the organization that they should be aware of. We suggest trying to strike a balance here. While this is a serious topic, you also want to try to keep it light. Use real-world examples to help illustrate what you mean. And rather than just outlining expectations or reading through the rule book or the handbook or whatever, you try to think of a scenario that illustrates what it is that you're trying to convey. Better yet, try to pull from your own past experiences with other VISTA members if you have those experiences.
Definitely. Real world scenarios certainly can help get your point across without it feeling like a lecture, and they can help the member put personal perspectives on their own service. Well, speaking of personalizing things, Andy, what do you think that supervisors do surrounding individualized member work plans?
Well, beyond thoroughly reviewing a member's STAD, their VISTA assignment description, we suggest helping them develop a work plan that outlines their assignment activities and then breaks it down into smaller incremental tasks and aligns that with a detailed timeline that's going to make sure they can achieve their goals in the time they've got ahead.
This is such an important element. During service, it's a huge thing to have a detailed work plan to keep it organized, help avoid getting overwhelmed, especially because of the scope of the VAD, and really use the work line to outline opportunities for growth and development. Andy, this is wonderful stuff. But I do have a question. How do supervisors even help members understand their role as a member within their own VISTA project?
I'm going to ask that question, Eric, because it can be challenging for members, as some of us know. It can be challenging for them to describe what it is they do. So instead of just giving your member a tour of your site and expecting them to clearly articulate their role at the project, we suggest that you first help them craft a 1-minute introduction of themselves, an elevator pitch of sorts, which outlines who they are and what they'll be working on. They can then use this pitch when taking the tour and meeting others within the organization.
Andy, as you were talking, I was thinking about how that's such a great idea and something that I should probably do in my current role, come up with an elevator pitch. So on top of all of these ideas that you mentioned, I do think that what's most important is that supervisors take the time to ensure that their VISTA member understands the terms of their service and any specific do's and don'ts needed to have a successful year. So let's take a minute to take a closer look at some of those specifics.
All right, so there are several activities that VISTA members are prohibited from engaging in. You're probably aware of these. Those include political activities such as campaigning or lobbying, religious activities like proselytizing, and engaging in any activities that conflict with the objectives of the VISTA program. And that includes, of course, anything that is illegal. So if you discover that your member is engaging in any prohibited activities, you need to document it for your records and then inform the member immediately that their actions are not allowed and they could lead to removal from the program. Of course, if it continues to be a problem, then you're going to want to get in touch with your AmeriCorps regional office. Now let's move ahead and look at sort of the next phase as we define it in the VISTA member life cycle. So as a member progresses through their service, they may start to encounter some setbacks or challenges that could lead to frustration and disappointment. This time frame is known as the disillusioned learner phase. It's a critical period when members may start to question the impact of their work, as well as their ability to make a difference. As a supervisor, your role during this phase is essential in helping the member navigate these difficult emotions and to find ways to overcome the challenges. So in your role as a supervisor, it'll be important to recognize the signs of disillusionment so you can be there to help your member to navigate this rocky phase. Members in the disillusioned learner phase might begin to feel frustrated or irritated at times. They could become discouraged in their service activities or in general. They might be anxious about one or many things or feeling overwhelmed by their mounting tasks, yet what feels like or can feel like slow progress. They may have encountered unexpected obstacles or even made some mistakes that now they must recover from. Members in this phase characteristically need the following from a supervisor. First of all, they need encouragement and support to help them stay motivated during both the good and the challenging times. They need a safe and non-judgmental space where they can share their concerns and their frustrations. They also need opportunities to connect with their peers and others in your organization so they can share experiences, gain new perspectives, and build a sense of community. And finally, your members in this phase will benefit from regular check-ins to discuss their progress, for you to provide feedback and support to them, and to help the member feel like they belong.
Hopefully, as Andy's been talking, you've been seeing that as a supervisor, you really bring a wealth of knowledge and experience to this conversation. So we'd like to hear from you now. For this activity, we'll be using a Jamboard. So first, we'll ask you to click on the link that you'll see in the chat. Once the Jamboard opens, to share your comment, you'll simply select the sticky note icon from the left toolbar. Then you'll type your response, and please make sure that you select Save so that your sticky note gets posted for everyone to see. The question that we want everyone to respond to in the Jamboard is, what are some activities that you can do as a supervisor to help support a VISTA member in the disillusioned learner phase? So again, click on the link in the chat, then click on the sticky note and make sure to save your note in the Jamboard. And we're asking you to answer the question, what are some activities that you can do as a supervisor to help support a VISTA member in the disillusioned learner phase? Give you a little bit of time to do that. And you'll see the Jamboard posted on the screen. So we'll see your comments live. We'll read some of them off as well. And if you are receiving a link or if you're receiving a message that says there's unable to join the Jamboard because there's too many, we'll simply ask once you post your comment, if you could exit the Jamboard, we'll display it on the screen so we can see it live. And that way we can have several different people joining the Jamboard to post their comment and then exiting the Jamboard so we can see it all live. If you're unable to access the Jamboard, you can post it in the chat. But I'm seeing a lot of comments coming in so far, and I'll read off a few. And Andy, let me know if there's others that pop out to you. Again, we're looking for activities that you can do for members in the disillusioned learner phase. So one is ask open-ended questions to really find out what's holding them back, and really not just simple questions, but really to find out how they're doing and what you can do to help them. Give them a project that they can be successful in completing, so it shows them some energy and excitement and gets them motivated to really know that they're making progress. I also see one-on-one chats, really connecting with the member one-on-one to allow them the chance to really share what's on their mind and what information they need. Andy, what else are you seeing in here? I see a lot of comments popping in and great information being shared.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. There are a couple comments in here anyway, talking about motivation, right? So just providing feedback and praise and acknowledgement so that they know when they're on the right track, right? Because sometimes if you get no feedback, you're not sure, like, is this right or not? And understanding that, getting started early and being able to build that motivation is really important. Yeah, and sort of tied to that is underscoring the importance of what it is that they're doing. So sometimes feeling like they're not sure if what they're doing is important work or if it makes a difference, underscoring that for them. So that I think can really help propel members forward, help them know that they're on the right track and what they're doing is meaningful.
Absolutely. And we encourage you to continue to add comments. I see more and more coming in because if you have members in this disillusioned learner phase, of course, you want them to be able to migrate out so they can eventually move towards the future phases, which we're going to talk about. But I do hope that you saw some responses on this Jamboard that you can put in your own toolbox that maybe you can try one day in the future, especially as you may want to pull one of these ideas out if you notice that your member is in this disillusioned learner phase or a similar one during their year of service. So thank you for sharing that. And Andy, I'll turn it over to you for our next activity.
All right, so we'll switch back to the slides in just a second here. And while we're getting slides up, I'm going to introduce another scenario for you and ask you to think about it and to put it in perspective as if you are the supervisor who's working with this particular member. So in this case, the member is Jane, and Jane has been serving for 5 months. And the project site is a nonprofit that addresses food insecurity in the local community. So Jane's been instrumental in developing a recruitment and training strategy for volunteers who are going to work at this food bank. So remember, Jane, she's 5 months in, and recently she's faced some significant challenges in executing her plans. And that's resulted in low morale and feelings of demotivation. Jane's beginning to question the impact of her service and whether she made the right decision to join AmeriCorps. So as a supervisor, how would you respond to a situation like this? You don't need to write anything. We just want you to reflect for a few seconds on what you might do with this type of situation. All right, I know that was not much time, but maybe you have an idea in your mind about what you might try. So let's see what actually happened in this case. So Mira is Jane's supervisor, and she noticed this change in Jane's demeanor, and she decided to take action. Since Jane is developing a recruitment and training strategy for the food bank volunteers, Mira took Jane to visit some of the people who depend on the food bank, including volunteers directly impacted by Mira's activities. Seeing the direct impact of their work on the community helped Jane regain her motivation and drive to overcome the obstacles that she was facing. So sometimes seeing the impact of our work firsthand can help us understand the true value of the work that we do. Okay, so let's move on now and look at this third phase that we see in the VISTA member life cycle about months 6 to 9. And so by the time members get to this point in their service, again, around the 6th month or so, they typically work through the challenging disillusioned learner phase. And this is when they start to feel more confident in their work and make some significant strides in their project goals. So members in this phase are often referred to as reluctant contributors. So at this point, your members have gained a deep understanding of their role, and they can now take some initiative to make a more significant impact with the project and in the community with the guidance and support of their supervisor. These members are known to be reliable and dependable. They're people that you can count on. They are collaborative and willing to work together with others and just on a roll, getting things done for America. So it's an exciting time for both the member and their supervisor as they see the progress being made towards their goal. But remember, this VISTA member still needs some special targeted support along the way. So again, even though these members appear to be hitting their stride, it's essential to note that they still need support and opportunities for growth, development, and advancement. They're also going to need reassurance that they're capable of handling more responsibility and taking on larger challenges. We find that VISTA members in this phase can benefit from increased independence, some leadership opportunities, as well as work opportunities that test their growth abilities. And lastly, reluctant contributors require some targeted feedback to identify what they're doing well and where they can improve.
Here are some activities that you may want to consider when supervising a VISTA member in the reluctant contributor phase.
So we'll begin with supporting your members' presence during meetings. One way to do this is by offering them a chance to shadow you at a meeting. And then at each subsequent meeting, you can gradually give them more speaking and presentation opportunities. This will not only grow their presence within the organization, but should support their confidence as well.
Now, this can sound a little bit scary at first, especially for a member who may lack confidence in speaking to a group of people, but it does gradually phase the member into more of a leadership role in leading a meeting and being confident in their role. Andy, what would you say about helping them overcome imposter syndrome? You know, that feeling that you're just not good enough?
Sure. So that, getting that feeling can be extremely disheartening and discouraging for your members. So we suggest encouraging members to keep a journal of their achievements and to track any positive feedback that they get during their service. I have a folder that I keep, both a physical one in my drawer, and then I have an electronic folder on my computer that I call nice things. And anytime anybody sends me something that says, thanks, that was super helpful, or here's how I'm using what you're doing, I drop it in there. So this is something I use myself. And I suggest that, it's kind of a great practice. So you may want to suggest that for your members, especially even as they're getting started, because it's a great way to boost morale and to remind your members that they are making valuable contributions in the organization. We don't have time to go into a bunch of other possible ideas, but supervisors will want to be creative in how they consider engaging members in situations such as these. Eric, do you want to take on the next one?
Sure, I would love to, especially because I really, really, really like this one. And I'll just briefly say that when I was serving as a VISTA member, and even well after my service here, even now, I've been blessed by having supervisors talk about growth and professional development, because it was really important to them that I, as a VISTA member and later as a staff member, advance my own knowledge and skills, not just for the VISTA project, but also for myself. And one activity that was mentioned was simply creating a visual representation, such as a graphic organizer or maybe a concept map, to highlight activities and areas where I was interested in and potential skill building opportunities. Especially for people who are visual learners, this activity clearly helps them see potential. Then you can use that visual map to drive conversations with your members during regular check-ins about specific professional development.
Eric, that sounds like it'd be really helpful and useful. I also want to add a strategy that supervisors can consider, and this is known as reverse mentoring. If you're not familiar with it, reverse mentoring is when we sort of flip the traditional mentoring model and have the VISTA member mentor the supervisor on some topic area or in a skill that they're passionate about or that they have some expertise in. This can help make the member-supervisor relationship more of a two-way street, provide reciprocal connection, and it really can boost the member's confidence.
I was reflecting on these suggestions, Andy, and I know you and I both know that supervisors, especially VISTA supervisors, are very busy people. But the really cool thing about the activities that we just discussed, each one is a relatively quick and easy activity without much planning needed ahead of time, and you can go into as much detail as you wish. So as we move through a typical year of service, let's see what the last stage of the VISTA member lifecycle is all about.
All right, so here's the final stretch of the typical VISTA member year. And as a VISTA member nears the end of their year of service, they're considered to be in what's called the peak performer phase. So remember Mackenzie, who we introduced earlier in the session? She's in the final month of her service, and so she would be considered a peak performer. You may be wondering, what characteristics do we typically see in VISTA members like Mackenzie who are nearing the end of their service? Well, peak performers typically are self-sufficient and independent. They've got some experience in either very specific areas or sometimes in broad areas. By this time, they have become resourceful, creative. They're able to use their imagination for problem solving and figuring things out. They're also reflective as they think through processes and actions. With almost a year under their belt, it may feel like your member no longer needs your support, but there are still many meaningful activities you can and should do to support their continued growth and their eventual transition out of VISTA life.
That makes a lot of sense, Andy. Thank you for that information. And I see we've moved on to the activities to specifically consider when supervising a peak performer. So what would you say is the first strategic activity that you'd recommend?
Well, the first one is setting aside some time to conduct and reflect on the results of a mock interview with your member. So this can be a great way to help prepare them for job interviews after their service period ends. And by simulating a job interview, you can provide feedback and help them improve their interviewing skills, as well as help them to gather information, help you gather information about them to help you improve your supervision style for future members.
I'll chime in here quickly before you go to the next one, Andy, to say exit interviews are incredible opportunities that may go overlooked. I also really don't want supervisors to overlook having their members attend networking events or conferences in their field of interest, because that can really make a positive difference as well.
Yeah, great suggestion there, Eric. And often supervisors have some of those connections into those networks or events or conferences, so supervisors can be a great help there. And those events are great opportunities for members to learn new skills as well as networking with others. So while it's great to encourage your member to attend an experience like this, it's even more valuable if you help them prepare for the event so they can make the most out of that opportunity.
I remember that during my service, my supervisor sat down with me before I attended a professional development opportunity to specifically ask me certain questions, and her goal was to get me thinking about my goals, my plans, and my expectations. As a supervisor, you should consider questions for your members such as, who do you want to make connections with? And where do you want to spend most of your time? Or a question such as, what do you hope to do with the information you learn? Don't do the work for your member, but put the onus on your member to create a strategy prior to attending the professional development event so that they can maximize their time there, as well as maximize the use of what they learned.
Yeah, that's fantastic, Eric. And I think it's, modeling what VISTA members should be doing, not only in their own job opportunities, job interviews going up, but other networking opportunities that are there. And that's closely connected to our next activity, which is brainstorming transferable skills. So Eric, can you explain that a little bit more?
Sure. I guess I'll start by saying to brainstorm transferable skills, the best idea is for you to collaborate with your VISTA member during a routine check-in to create a list of tasks and responsibilities that they have taken on during their service. And at least in the initial brainstorm, any and all items mentioned should be noted, as the first step is not to critique or to make a decision about items mentioned, but simply to get them out there. Then you can later take the time to identify the skills that they've gained from each task that can apply to future jobs. This exercise really helps your VISTA member to recognize the strengths and the skills that they've acquired during their time with AmeriCorps.
All right, thanks for that. And lastly, we suggest this final activity. And that is to create opportunities for your member to showcase their accomplishments and share any valuable lessons that they've learned. This helps celebrate their successes and highlight the contributions to the project. And it can happen through a presentation to the project team, right, to the other VISTA members there, or it could be a written piece for your organization's newsletter, a report, or some other vehicle. So thanks for your help with that, Eric. And now let's take a look at talking about check-ins. As your member service comes to a close and their project work wraps up, it's important to continue meeting regularly. As we mentioned earlier, we know that you're busy, but just think about how strong and effective member supervision is connected to member satisfaction. If you were serving, wouldn't you want your supervisor to set aside regularly scheduled time to work with you, listen to you, and support you? And although the conversation topics may be different than they were earlier in service, this phase is an opportunity to reflect on the past year and celebrate accomplishments while planning for future success.
Thank you for that, Andy. And with that information that you just provided us, we're going to ask you now to consider the following scenario. Mackenzie has been an outstanding performer and made significant contributions to the center where she serves. As her service year approaches its end and her project activities wrap up, her supervisor, Lisa, wants to make sure that they make the most of their remaining check-in meetings. Lisa recognizes that the peak performer phase is critical for both reflecting on the past year and preparing Mackenzie for her future beyond VISTA. For their upcoming meeting, Lisa wants to ask thought-provoking questions that will help Mackenzie reflect on her accomplishments and plan for the future. In the chat, we're going to ask you now to respond to the following question. Based on this scenario, and in general, what are some thought-provoking questions that you can ask your VISTA member during this peak performer phase? Again, for this activity, we'll ask you to type your question in the chat. We'll give you a few seconds to add your comment, and then we'll read off a few responses. I'm liking the questions that are coming in so far. They appear to be thought-provoking and not simple yes or no questions such as what could I do better to support a new VISTA, or what could I do better to support you as a VISTA member? Questions such as what is something that you didn't expect to learn? And a similar question is what is something else that you would like to learn that I can help you learn as you finish your year of service? And I see a couple more coming in. What weaknesses have you converted to strengths? That really gets them to think about how much they've grown since their years of service started. And Andy, any others that you see coming in that you can read? I appreciate all the comments coming in.
Yeah, I think there's some great ones and I think you've covered a lot of the range of topics that are listed there.
Well, thank you for these responses, and keep them coming as we continue, because you might be able to learn from these and use these questions for your members as they get to the peak performer phase. So Andy, I will turn it back to you.
All right, thanks, Eric. Thank you all for those ideas. Keep them coming. So far we've covered the 4 major phases that a VISTA member typically experiences during a year of service. We also identified some actionable steps that you as a supervisor can take to provide support for them. Remember, though, that supporting your member goes beyond these 4 phases, especially because there are things you can do regardless of where your member is, right? So first, you're going to want to regularly revisit and assess the VAD goals, as well as the member's project, adjusting timelines as needed, and strive to frequently provide meaningful feedback. You can also offer ongoing training, professional development opportunities to help your member continually improve their skills and knowledge. Lastly, and we can't stress this one enough, you need to make documentation a priority. So by documenting your VISTA members' journey and the work that they're doing during their time with your organization, you preserve institutional knowledge and ensure that the project continues to thrive beyond the member service year. So Eric, I think you have something more to say on that topic.
Yes, I do. I was just going to simply mention that we know that some individuals are accustomed to consistently documenting their work, but this may not be second nature to everyone. So for that reason, we do want to highlight some things that you may want to consider documenting during each phase that we discussed earlier. And you'll be able to find more information about this on today's handout, which you can access via a link in the chat. So let's think back to those enthusiastic beginners who are at the very start of their service. Remember that these VISTA members typically are eager to learn, they're optimistic, they're motivated. So Andy, what information would you suggest a supervisor capture and document during this phase?
So I would recommend documenting any onboarding and training materials that you created or used, any planning documents, such as a work plan or timeline that were created, and then an outline of your agreed upon check-in frequencies, any communication norms that you set up, and then specific tasks that you and your VISTA member are responsible for. And finally, any notable questions or challenges that the VISTA member had during this phase of their service.
As we move into the disillusioned learner phase, we know that members typically feel overwhelmed and question the impact of their service. So it's important to document the following.
Yeah, so here it would be things like specific roadblocks that your VISTA member faced, as well as the strategies or resources that you provided them to help them overcome those challenges. Any adjustments that you made to the VISTA members' goals or their work plan or the timeline for getting those things done. And then lastly, any examples of your VISTA members' accomplishments so far, right? And any positive feedback that they've received.
Great points. And I know that because this is such a lot of information to keep track of, Andy and I are going to show you a simple tool that you can use to organize all this information in one place.
Yeah, I'm all about keeping things simple. So one effective way to store your documentation in one place is to use a table along the lines of the one you see on the screen here. By saving it to your desktop or bookmarking it in your browser, you can quickly open it, add to it with just a few clicks. And doing it this way allows you to keep track of anecdotal notes from your meetings as they happen, as well as including maybe links to important documents or communications so that you can find them again in the future. And here's an example of what it could look like once it's filled out. So on May 12th, this supervisor recorded the key points discussed during routine check-in with the VISTA member. They then used the last column of the table to hyperlink an email that praised the VISTA member's hard work and the contributions so far in the project. Positive feedback like this may come in handy down the road when it's time for the VISTA member to start discussing achievements or build a resume and then prepare for life after VISTA. And then about a month later, this supervisor documented that the member's timeline had been adjusted. Then they linked the work plan in the table for future reference. Again, this is just a simple table, but it can be very effective in organizing and documenting your supervision around your member.
Andy, that tool sounds extremely handy, including, as we recall, the reluctant contributors who are typically VISTA members over halfway through their service, comfortable with the work they're doing, and now have the capacity to take on additional leadership opportunities. So as we move on to the final stage, we're going to ask you just to respond to this question in the chat. and you can feel free to do that a little bit later as well. But the question we're going to ask is, what should a supervisor consider documenting during the reluctant contributor phase? And while you go ahead and respond to that, we'll go ahead and give you a few hints about some of the things you can include. So this might add to what you're showing in the chat. So as we look at the documentation for months 10 through 12, as we discussed, peak performers are members who are nearing the end of their service year and typically are highly skilled in their assigned tasks, able to take initiative, and can successfully work independently. Andy, is there anything that quickly comes to mind pertaining to this phase that you think supervisors should document?
Yeah, I'll mention just a few here. It'll be helpful to capture any exit interview responses or feedback that the member gave about their experience on your project. A summary of how the member's work impacted the organization and the community, and then any documents or resources you used to assist in their transition out of their VISTA service. And of course, you'll want to keep their contact information so that you can stay in touch afterwards.
And a disclaimer here, please note that these are merely suggestions. Ultimately, it's up to you what to document and how to document it. And as we near the end of our session, let's take a moment to reflect on two main ideas that we hope you walk away with today. First, regardless of whether you're a new supervisor or someone with lots of experience working with members, it's important to remember that as a member progresses through their service year, their strengths and their areas of need will inevitably evolve. So make sure you stay attuned to these changes and adapt your supervision style accordingly. Secondly, documentation is a crucial aspect of successful supervision, as it helps capture institutional knowledge, ensures continuity, and it can facilitate a smooth transition for future VISTA members. These steps will help you create a lasting impact on your member and the community they serve. So before we finish the session, we'd like to see how well you followed today's conversation. I'm going to read through a short scenario, then you'll see a pop-up matching question appear on your screen. If you do not see the pop-up question appear on your screen, please let us know in the chat and our partners will assist you. So let's go ahead with a short scenario. You currently supervise 4 VISTA members. Each one is in a different phase of the typical VISTA member lifecycle. You want to support them as best as possible through this phase and throughout their year. Your task is, using the poll that appears on the screen, match each supervision task with the corresponding phase of the VISTA member lifecycle. And please note, we only want you to use A, B, C, and D once. So as a reminder, you'll see a poll appear on your screen. It's a matching activity. You should only use A, B, C, and D once, and you want to match each supervision task with the corresponding phase of the VISTA member lifecycle. So thank you very much for participating in that quick activity. Let's go ahead and take a look at the correct answers. Keeping in mind that some of these actions you can take during various phases of the VISTA member lifecycle, but these are the phases where you definitely want to focus your attention on these actions. So number 1, offering leadership opportunities, best matches with letter C, reluctant contributor. And just recall that VISTA members in this phase are starting to make significant strides in their project work and are ready to take on new challenges so they can continually grow. Number 2, assist in building a transferable, skills-focused resume. Best corresponds to letter D, peak performers who are preparing to transition out of service and return to life outside of VISTA. Number 3, review terms of service and prohibited activities is best suited for VISTA members in letter A, the enthusiastic beginner stage. These new VISTA members need to understand the do's and don'ts of their service right away. And lastly, number 4, offer stress management resources. Best corresponds to letter B, disillusioned learner, that this challenging phase occurs around months 3 to 5 and is characterized by VISTA members' dip in motivation due to stress and mounting challenges. So thank you very much for that. A couple of other quick items. As you seek to develop and refine your member supervision strategy, we strongly encourage you to click on the link in the chat to review this recommendation for further study on situational leadership. We discussed a few of these elements earlier in the session, the work of Ken Blanchard, that really goes into the 4 phases of what we discussed. So it's a very, very good read. I recommend it. And then as you learned and want to take more advantage of resources on the VISTA campus, I'm going to draw your attention to one quick tool and a very new resource that I think you will find very, very helpful in your work. Very briefly, the VISTA campus has 2 sections. VISTA Training is where you access learning paths and modules for recorded webinars and materials. This section that you see on the screen is called VISTA Connect, where you can collaborate and network with others. And speaking of VISTA Connect, I want to show you a new resource. There's a new feature on the VISTA campus that allows you to upload resources that you have created and share them with your colleagues, which I know people don't want to reinvent the wheel, so this is a great opportunity. Simply go to VISTA Connect. In the gray menu bar on the VISTA Connect, you'll see an Explore drop-down menu. Open the Explore menu and select Groups. On the list of groups, select the group that applies to you. For this example, we simply selected leaders, but you would select supervisors. Then look for the link to resources in medium blue bar toward the right side. You'll see a button that says Create Resource. Click that to open the form. Simply enter information about the resource, describe how it can be used, and then attach a Word document, Excel spreadsheet, or PowerPoint presentation, or a PDF. Click Save, and your resource will be queued for moderator review. Once approved, it'll appear on the site. This is a brand new feature, so we encourage you to use it and take advantage of it. Before you leave, we strongly recommend you fill out this short evaluation of today's session. We'll also send out a link to it tomorrow, but please, please, please take just 2 or 3 minutes to fill out this evaluation and let us know how it went. And then finally, there were a few questions that came in that I will respond to via email. So thank you very much for those and for your participation today. And speaking of thank you, I want to extend a huge thank you to my colleague, Andy King, for being today's presenter, and a big thank you to you for serving as an AmeriCorps VISTA supervisor and for participating in today's webinar. Have a great day. This concludes today's webinar.